Okay, so it has been a long day, so we'll try to keep you awake with the panel discussion. And the question that we will debate is: can we maximize value from serialization? So we have some questions that we prepared that we will debate with the panelists. So if you have any question that is coming in on top of your head during the discussion, feel free to come to the mic. We want this session to be as interactive as it could be. So feel free to step up and to take the mic to ask some question. But just maybe a little round of presentation. We saw Amit and Daniel this morning, but maybe a few words to represent yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Antonio. My name is Amit Deshpande, for those who couldn't attend the presentation in the morning. I've been associated with serialization for past 15 years. So since California days, I've seen, so I've graduated or I've grown with this particular technology or area, been passionate. Right now working with Novartis as service delivery manager in IT, leading the IT part of serialization. So that's about me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sébastien Mauel, I'm working for PHARMA in Switzerland. I've been also for a few years doing serialization, not as long as Amit, but nearly 10 years almost. And well, basically in my company, I'm the global process owner for serialization.
Thank you.
Yeah, and my name is Dan Fritz. I'm with Novartis, been there almost 20 years, always in supply chain IT or manufacturing IT. So that included shop floor and some serialization, some anti-counterfeiting systems. And over the past years, as a supply chain technology architect, looking at the technology decisions for supply chain capabilities and processes, as well as emerging technologies, which led us to the blockchain topic.
Thank you, Daniel. Marcel, you want to add a few words to present yourself?
Yeah, just shortly. So my role is now liaison regulatory affairs in Abbott, as I spoke. I'm 33 years in the company, but in many different roles. So and lately, so from operations to packaging, develop quality control, supply chain management, automation, MAS lead. Implementing SAP, and now in serialization as well.
Okay, thank you. And from my hand, I'm Antoine Track, so I'm head of global logistics and serialization at Galderma. So I run the serialization program for my company during 3 years, from 2015 to 2018. And now I took more a global role from a global logistics side, but I kept the serialization in my area. And I'm the global business owner for Galderma for serialization. Okay, so let's go to the first question. So what is underpinning the discussion in the life science industry about using serialization, track and trace data to create additional business value? So from your standpoint, maybe Amit, you want to start?
Yeah, I think the important thing about this question is, whom do you ask this question? So it depends, the answer depends also upon who is answering that question. So let's suppose if you ask that question to a packaging engineer, the answer would be definitely different than the people who are working at the global level or supply chain level. Or the global SPT or track and trace level. So the answer keeps on changing. So let's go step by step. So L1 and L3, I think we heard today in many presentations about OEE, how to use that data for OEE improvements. I think here we also had a great discussion while we were doing. So we had a couple of colleagues from Bio who were participating. We discussed how do we achieve that. At certain level, what is the impact of the regulations on the packaging lines? But that is still from regulation perspective. How do we use that data at that particular lower level, L1 to L3? That's work in progress. Maybe L4 and L5 above, that's where the data gets consolidated, and that's where the fun begins. Yes, we are thinking in short term right now, short term to mid term, about how to leverage this data But the long-term view would be, if I have to put in simple words, we should use this data for sustainability. So I would summarize this as achieving sustainability through traceability. So what do I mean by sustainability is using these decisions for proper planning, right? We also saw in Russia like how that data can be really used. You can make wise decisions over there. So.
Okay. Thank you, Amit, for that. So, Sébastien, do you want to add on top of that?
Yeah, so for me, the point is to now use this data to create visibility in the supply chain. Now, every pack has its own name. So this name can be enriched with a lot of information. And so not only do we have to enrich it, but we have to then retrieve it at a later stage to make better decisions, make more informed decisions. And I mean, this is slowly becoming a reality, but we are still far from the goal, I think. There's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I agree. There is still a lot of work to do. Daniel?
Yeah, I think we saw it today. This concept of what's next is coming as a digital twin. So if every pack has a unique identity, then we can track this from its creation, from what raw materials went into it, actually down to the thing. But I think the last session, I think Marcel actually hit it when he was talking about this digital health. This data matrix and that serialization, I think, is the key. We talked about the key, okay, for verification of a serial number, but how we could also use this to identify if there's anti-counterfeit features on the pack or perform other anti-counterfeiting checks. In the break, we talked about some other things that you could do. You could inform a user, with their consent, how to properly dispose of medicine when it reaches its shelf life, or you could actually even ask them if they want to donate it for some low to medium income country that needs that medicine, if it's excess. You could add it to a virtual medicine cabinet, which could run known drug interaction issues and everything. And the very basic one is, if I'm a patient and I want the latest and greatest product information, I want to know if it's under recall, and I want to know what the side effects are, and I want it in a pretty smart and easy way to not a gigantic piece of paper where I have to search. So that's just the beginning, and I think linking it with reimbursement, like Marcel was mentioned, linking it with adherence. So maybe my insurance will pay me a little bit more if I confirm that I've, taken my pill twice a day, because I don't know, I read somewhere that people are more likely to ensure that their dogs or their pets take their medicine than they do themselves. So I think it's just the start, but it's really, I think, a transformation is coming slowly, but I think we're starting to gain a little steam.
Mm-hmm. Marcel, transformation is coming slowly, so yeah, go ahead.
What I mentioned is I think it's really one of the components of the digital transformation that we're in. The thing is that most people are looking at this as a project, but it's not a project. I always tell it's really a transformation, and finally it will affect the whole chain, even already starting from research and development. So what I explained about quality by design, there's so much data on the behavior of products, for example, already in operations, but it's not unlocked to the researchers or to the clinical trial data. And in the future, we can connect everything. If we now build the right foundation, because that's the most important now.
Thank you, Marcel. Sébastien, you were talking about visibility. So could you elaborate a little bit what is the value of visibility to the life science supply chain? What stands for the benefits? This is our second question.
Yeah, so if you have a better visibility over your inventory, you know exactly what is where at what time, what is the expiry date, what you have to dispose of first, what is most urgent to sell. So, this is just like basic information that would help manage the supply chain in a better way. Now, I've always been very disappointed that we are not able to get any feedback from the European system, for instance. This is the other side when the products are out of our companies. I'm a supply chain guy, I'm not a commercial guy. I'm not interested in knowing the price or the name of the patient. I just want to know how many boxes per day have been dispensed in a given country so that my colleagues in planning can do a better job so that we can maybe anticipate stockouts and react quicker to the demand of the market. And this basic information that would be a benefit for everyone, not only us companies, but also for the pharmacists and the patients, we can't access it. So it's really a pity, and I think that's an area where we have to lobby stronger the politics, if we can do so.
Yeah. So what is your view on the question, maybe, Amit? Do you think we have some things to do?
I second the thoughts what Sebastian has shared. So it's history of human beings. We have been solving what, where, when, how. How has been added, why and how. We have been answering these questions, and now we are at the cusp of that particular, I would say, technological transformation where we are bridging the gap between the virtual and the physical world. We just need to leverage it from that data science perspective, how we use that. And Sebastian has rightly pointed out, the fundamental questions we are still struggling to answer. Even after implementing serialization for 15 years, we are still not there. So we are still scratching the surface of track and trace. From law perspective, we don't have track and trace in all countries yet. The vision would be to go towards that. Of course, there are many challenges. Why aggregation, why not? We had debate about that also. But that's where I said sustainability through traceability would be the vision, long-term vision. Mm-hmm. And I think this informed decision-making would help us, and visibility plays a key role there.
So do you think it will take another 15 years to come to that?
I think the experts over here need to vote how easy or quicker they would like to do it. But it's not the experts over here, but we also have regulatory authorities there. Because that's the key driver why pharma industry is the first industry which has moved in that direction. Had there been no law, we would have never done this. Right? So that has been an impetus, we must agree. Now the question is, how slowly other countries, because we have done only 25%, around 40 plus countries, we have still left with around 150 countries. Yeah. So still, if we take all those aspects into consideration, there is also a cost side also, right? It's not about taking the benefits out of data immediately. Also, companies have to think about the investments. So they have to invest as well as think about investment for utilizing or leveraging that data. So that second part, the long-term vision, is building up, but it has to be consciously driven. Maybe that could be also agenda going forward, which we are already having in conferences like this, to talk about that, about data.
Yeah. Okay. So how about standardization processes? Maybe a question for you, Marcel. So what can we learn from each other in that area? Could you help us to answer this question?
Yeah, first of all, standardization is a very difficult process because many players in the field have different objectives. And it is also not always sexy to work on standardization. But I fear that today in pharma we are building nice modern system, but on a weak foundation. So we need to standardize more. And what we have seen also in our serialization processes is that the key point is still master data and data modeling. That's also what we saw when we implemented serialization in Saudi, how much wrong data was reported. So we cannot build sophisticated and new systems on a weak foundation. And maybe in master data, IDMP and GS1, GDSN will help. But I also see that we sometimes focus too much on technologies and not on the use cases, which we need, I think, to put in a more holistic perspective and keep things simple and understandable. And what I want to mention here, and I'm not against that, people are thinking that, but blockchain, for example, from my point of view, is a good technology to be used for financial transactions, for order to cash and other data. But if you look more in depth alone, blockchain alone is not addressing the use cases that we have in pharma as such. So for example, if you say that blockchain is solving the issues with e-pill, you can also say, okay, you can use the GS1 data matrix because you need it to scan, and then you can use the GS1 digital link, like we already do for many mobile apps. And in China, for example, that's already implemented. And then also the security, we are focusing on security on supply chain, where the current issues that we had were encrypted systems in operations with malware, which were reported. So, and then also for when we talk about artificial intelligence, I was working on this as well, but it doesn't work when the master data is not right and not modeled in the right way. So therefore, I'm always preaching, okay, look to existing technologies like OpenCUA that we are using in the OpenSCS, which has this modeling and is using existing standards like CIS, ISA 95, and also others. And there are many other companion specs that can be used, like for lab data, master data exchange, automation systems, and it addressed also the security things that we need in operations. And then finally, where I see a risk is that in emergency countries, and we have seen that many times, the need for standardization is not always recognized yet. However, the adoption of new technologies and implementing new systems include 5G and mobile apps is higher than in the Western world. And if we are not able to teach and explain them why the basics are so important, then we get in risk, because finally that system will also be used across the world. So I think that also we need to look for, and we need to work more to work as companies together to support that open standards, and not try to sell our own solutions that we have developed even for our own companies. I think that finally that will not it's not sustainable.
Thank you, Marcel. So Daniel, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, well, I agree with Marcel's comment that blockchain is not going to solve these problems, right? I mean, we consider blockchain, as I said, a thin backbone or a foundational technology, not a disruptive technology. And what I think is going to actually bring the value there is the application of standards. I have a new appreciation for standards. I don't know if Craig is still, yeah. We've been working on EPCIS. Well, we've been in, this doesn't go quite as quickly as you might expect sometimes, but the value of that is very great. I mean, that's what's going to ultimately ensure interoperability between different trading partners when this is properly implemented. And a project like Pharma Ledger, if we had to worry about EPCIS or GLN or data matrix or something like that, we wouldn't get started. These things takes years to develop. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to leverage existing standards as much as possible, not only for goods traceability, but we're also doing this with identity. We're partnering with GS1 on a self-sovereign identity concept that leverages the global location number for confirmation of who we're doing business with. So from that perspective, I agree. The standards are a necessity, and we should support it.
Thank you, Daniel. So let's move a little.
We have a question from the audience.
Yeah, we have a question, Stefan. Good.
This is Amit will answer this question.
Yeah, my short question is: do you think that we really invest our resources in the right topics? And the reason for asking is Daniel just talked about the new standards that allow interoperability. We heard about supply chain visibility, and we don't have it established technically. but we don't have it established procedurally as well. I mean, for years, we could have insights in the inventory of our wholesalers. They would be willing to share this information with us. And we don't need necessarily, in my view, the serial numbers. So, and my impression is, yeah, we are working on the technical level, yeah, a lot, but we are forgetting that it requires agreement with the other partners to share the data. And therefore, the provocative question, are we really, what do you think? Are we investing our effort or our resources into the right topics?
Thank you, Stefan. So maybe, Sébastien, you want to start answering the question for the partners, the wholesalers, everybody in the supply chain.
So all I can say is that I've never seen much appetite in our management to go in that direction indeed. Yeah. So, I mean, I tend to agree what Stefan is saying. Now I don't have the magic recipe to make that change, unfortunately. Maybe at least we can start. We spoke about serialization standards before. We could maybe speak about standardization of our processes inside of our companies. Typically today we have packs that we don't serialize, packs we serialize, packs we aggregate, packs we serialize with a crypto code. I mean, let's at least, I will be provocative, but let's get rid of the non-serialized stuff. I mean, in our company, 75% of the revenue is now generated by products which are serialized. Why don't we just serialize the remaining 25%? At least we eliminate one process. And we harmonize the packaging practices. So, I mean, this would be for me a futuristic way to invest our resources.
Thank you, Sébastien. Amit, you want to add?
Yeah, maybe I think the question was really great, right? But I think we are having this question because of serialization, right? So I would say that yes, it was an impetus which asked us, because as rightly mentioned by Sebastian, so far management, even though without serialization as mentioned by Stefan, we could have achieved. But question is why we didn't take those initiatives, right? We needed something external force to move in that direction, and that's why we are asking those questions. It was possible with old technologies also to do that. Somebody could have defined those standards. Even GS1 had those standards. EDIs were there. Those standards are there. But I think nobody had willingness to do that. But I think we need something like this external force to drive us. And it's good in terms of making us think, what are the next steps now? How to leverage this particular foundation which has been created.
Yeah, so thank you for the transition. We are coming to the question. So what is the future of serialization? So it's a wide question. We have touching a little bit that during the day, but what is the future of that? Marcel, you want to start?
Yeah, I think also I was agreeing with Amit that the question in this case is now organized by civilization, but I would more say that the question should be related to the digital transformation. So take it more wider, and that's also if you look about the future, then civilization is just a small component of what is coming. So I think we are just in the beginning of the journey of the digital transformation that we have, and we should also closely look what is happening in other industry. So, for example, we can take learnings for. I was in a congress 3 weeks ago from a complete other different area, so in different industries, and they explained that they have found out that they stopped even with implementing high sophisticated AI systems because they have seen that it was not working because they had to fix the data and the data modeling before, and they had needed human intervention to correct the data in the end. They will go for additive intelligence, so they are restarting this now, but they went to a complete journey. And in pharma, we don't take that hurdles. So we want to go to the end goal, but we have not looked to what we have to do before we can reach that. So, and I completely agree with Stefan when you look from that perspective. I think we put the resources on the wrong things. And what I mentioned is also because it's not sexy. If you are working on automation, on security, that's not sexy. You are not have a return on investment with that directly, but it's needed to go for the next step. Data, if you are cleaning the master data, nobody is rewarding for this. So I think there should be also a management change in thinking that people are looking to that. If you are working on blockchain or other technologies, that's interesting, and you get rewarded by your company. But if you solve a security issue or you solve the issues with the master data, that's not recognized. So I think that should be changed first.
Thank you, Marcel. Anybody has anything to add for the future of serialization?
Maybe just to comment, coming back to Stefan's point about where we're putting our resources, I think that, and that with regard to the future of serialization, I mean, ultimately, the customer is the patient. That's where we should be putting the resources. I, as a patient, want to take the medicine, scan it on my phone, and hit add to electronic health record for the rest of my life. And I want to know exactly what batch that was. And I want, maybe in 50 years, or in a few years, I want to sell that data. I want to sell that data back to the pharmaceutical industry because they'll have a wonderful record of exactly what medicine I took with what ingredients, and they can use that for research. I want that, and I'm willing to pay a little bit more for it. Now, does everybody know that that technology exists today? We could realize it quite simply and very easily. We don't necessarily need blockchain for it. What we do need is this collaboration to come together. But I think, you know, as Marcel said, serialization is just a small piece of this. But it could be a starting point, you know, it could be the trigger for this. I want to know that it's an authentic product. I want to add it to my health record. I want to know how to dispose of it correctly. I want to know if there's any drug interaction issues and things like that. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, maybe just to add on to what I would like to summarize what Dan said is, like, right now we are doing a lot of push. Right? So it's more about the pull, what he's talking about. So customer behavior has to change. So when we say customer or patient behavior will change, saying that I want it, then industry will change it. Maybe the current legal setup doesn't allow patient to do that. Maybe that's where I think we need to put our energy and see, like, how we can, you and me can start scanning those things. Are any country allowing that to do that? We have invested for 15 years, and that is a question maybe to be asked to us, ourselves as a human beings, or also thinking forward from our future generations perspective, what is the legacy what we want to leave for them?
Yeah, I agree with that. Is there any question that you would like to ask, or something that our panelists didn't answer yet?
It's supposed to be interactive, right? It's not a lecture. So.
Or maybe others can also pitch in and provide their point of view, right? Maybe.
Yeah, so somebody want to add something on top of what we discussed? Yeah?
Nothing to add per se, but a question about, I'm coming back to the value proposition of serialization. So we all know the security and the patient safety, but what will it really take to be able to truly see end-to-end the movement, the inventory, the costs, all of that full kind of systems integration? Do you think that this could be realized more quickly? Because that was the promise that was sold, and I don't really see that throughout the supply chain.
So I would say that we lack the legal framework currently. I mean, the technology is here. The technology makes it possible, but there are laws that prevent us from accessing certain part of these data elements that we would need. So for me, that's a solid legal framework that we need to put in place first, and this could like enable then all this technology to be used.
Yeah, there are initiatives which are happening, right? Like, even though it's a bit late in the process, like serialization, as I said, started somewhere in 2005, but the authorities or the global bodies like ICMARA, where I think many of us have participated, we have come up with the guidelines over there about common technical denominator to educate also the legal authorities in different countries how to adopt that. So that is one way we could do that, and sometimes these discussions take time. So I would say, like, I joined in 2005 thinking that I will change the world in 10 years. But this little number with 4 variable or 4 data elements in that is still going on, right? So yes, the frustration is out there, like why we are not running fast. But in principle, it's about changing the way the industry, every partner in the supply chain has to change. It's just not about the number. You have to change the entire infrastructure across the supply chain, and it's a gradual process. Maybe that could have been improved. Go ahead,
Marcel?
Yeah, I agree with what you said, but I think there is also a very important thing in pharma as well, because most of our companies are stock driven, and the return on investment is always looked from a short term. And I think that should also change in pharma. So if the return on investment would be taken on a longer period, then we would also have the time to do something on the foundation and implement it gradually. But we always need to run fast, and then we are not doing things like we should do. So we are looking to the implementation cost, but not to the operational cost. And then later we find out, oh, but this is much more expensive than we thought. And then we are not creating the benefits of that because nobody trusts it anymore, and the management also don't want to invest anymore because we spent already 2 times more money than we had promised to do. And they say, oh, now we need even more money to make the next step. But if from the beginning they should look to a long-term return on investment, then that should not be happening. Because now we are focusing, we say, okay, we need serialization saying we need to implement this. It is a system based on regulatory compliance. We know how IT works. They have different categories, systems of innovation, systems of regulatory compliance, systems for operations. And it is a known fact in IT, when you have a system that has to comply with the regulation, you spend as less money as you can because you need just to comply. And it is not seen as a system for competitive. If we change that now, because we see that in the digital transformation, we can make the change with a regulatory-driven system like serialization, because it's just a component, then it creates another vision. So we cannot only point, I think, to the outside world, we also need to look what we need to change internally.
Maybe just one thing. I mean, we saw, I think earlier today, we saw the example from EPI in Japan, where end of this year or next year, the e-leaflet's got to be there, and then 2023, it's no longer included. That's the legislation. I guarantee you, if we had that kind of legislation in other jurisdictions, you wouldn't believe how fast the industry would move. They would, I think we said it in the video, you know, football fields of paper, millions and millions. I mean, there would be nothing. That transformation would be super quick. And you have to ask yourself, okay, where was that EPI for the corona vaccine? It was on a QR code. So when it comes down to life-saving medicine for all of Europe, well, let's just put that leaflet rule on hold. So if it works then for corona, I think it would work again for other medicines. And to the point around, you know, this very short-term investment thing, we're also looking and seeing more and more from investors that they're looking at the environmental, social, and governance aspects. This is a sustainability aspect that Amit brought up before. And when they see that, that there's companies that are driving this, that are pushing this, that are taking this environmental aspects into their programs, I think that will be rewarded as well, and that's a payback. So.
Agree.
Okay. So I think we are at the end of this this panel session. So thank you everybody. Thank you Amit. Thank you Sébastien.
Thank you.
Thank you Daniel. Thank you Marcel for the insights that you provided. I like what you said, Amit. Traceability is sustainability. So I think this is what we can retain from that, and how we can maximize value from serialization. So we can close the panel. Thank you very much. We just have a few words to close the day, and after we will be free for the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.